Day Tuesday.
Okay, we are about to be live. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, well, good morning. The time is 10:34. I'd like to call the Audit Committee meeting, order. And Gavin, if we can do, attendance and roll call.
Yes, so looks like everyone is here. All board members are accounted for, along with 3 staff from operational analysis.
All right, thank you. Next item is item C, review and approve for the, minutes, and, Gavin and staff sent out our minutes. Hope all you all had an opportunity to review and read those particular minutes, but I'll give you a minute to, see were there any corrections or anything anybody want to add to those minutes.
Oh, well done.
Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve and, the minutes for February 1st, 2024?
So, second,
Okay, it was, moved in motion by, Carl Blunt, second by, Donald Thomas, all in favor?
aye.
I've had it, no approve. Next item is item D, FY 24 auto work plan activity.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So we got a busy day today, but I think be pretty productive. It shows our progress thus far. And so as I go through this section of the agenda, there are 2 votes anticipated by the board today. So the first item of business, as discussed at the last meeting, was to consider a revision to the FY 24 audit work plan. And that's essentially our annual work plan where we, at the beginning of the year, say these are the audits that we would like to accomplish. And hearing the conversation at the last meeting and having a chance to talk with staff, both Judy and Katie, and look at everything, I would concur that that's probably the best option to go forward with right now, is to amend that plan to remove the HCD periodic audit and have that considered for the FY 25 calendar year, which again will start in July of this summer. But that will allow us to continue on our path with finishing up economic development, which we are in the home stretch of. And we've already gotten about halfway through with human resources, but that will take us to the end of the fiscal year with human resources. One thing that admittedly, after our meeting last time, sort of escaped my mind, but is obviously important, is the creation itself of the next FY 25 work plan and the amount of work that goes into that. And I'll admit that that may have been put on the back burner, but when thinking about gathering potential topics for consideration, putting those together in that matrix, and then eventually having you all consider that as well, that's all additional work that also needs to take place this fiscal year that really isn't reflected. So upon that review, we did amend the work plan to remove HCD. We extended some of the timelines for HR and ED just to build in a bit of a cushion, but both of those should be finished from a staff standpoint within the fiscal year, even though depending on mayor and commission cycles of activity and things like that, the actual approvals may not take place until potentially the new fiscal year, but staff's time will end with it by the end of this year. So if there are any questions, I'll happily entertain those, but we would look for a vote from this board, and then we will bring it before the mayor and commission for their next cycle, March, April cycle, if the board decides to go that route.
Okay.
So Kevin, the short version of this is that we are postponing, delay the
HCD,
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
And that'll basically take us from 4 total audits within a period of roughly 8 months was the schedule for this current fiscal year, because we didn't start, July 1st, down to 3 audits, which I still think in hindsight is pretty good, considering the time that we've, and
And-
our
and-
workload with Peace Cobb as
Yeah.
well. So,
And starting the process from,
yes,
And the new fiscal year starts in, 1 July?
yes, that's correct.
do you need a motion to?
Yes, so, can I get a motion to approve the,
Adjusted.
amended, work, audit work plan activity, which would exclude not doing the, HCD audit and continue with the, human resources and,
ED.
economic development, thank you.
Mhm.
So motion to modify the FY twenty-four work plan activity to, ask HTD for the next work plan for FY twenty-five.
And I'll second that.
Okay, it's been a motion by, Bill Higgins and second by Carol Myers. Can I, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you all.
All right,
Again,
yeah,
I do have one
Yes.
question that you may wanna, and I forgot to call you about this. I didn't see it in our thing, but, and we may can do it after we finish, but may wanna talk about the budget.
yes. Oh, yeah, and that'll be in some of my auditor's report, yes. Okay, thank you. So going to the next item under the current FY twenty-four work plan, we sort of touched upon it just now, but, we are in the midst of human resources audit. Many thanks, as always, to Katie and Judy, who are doing the bulk of the heavy lifting with that audit. We've nearly completed the planning phase, which is just sort of gathering all of the resources and information. For the most part, that's done. There's just a couple loose ends that we're looking for details on. Field work phase has been well underway. We typically spend Monday and Wednesday afternoons over there at their department and have been for the entire month thus far. And so we're actually on the latter side now of the field work phase. And then basically after March and a little bit into April is when we'll have completed the field work phase and move now into the final phase, which is the reporting and analysis. So that one is pretty well on track right now. But like I said, with the changes that have occurred in some of their departmental leadership, they're in a period of transition. We want to respect their time and not rush them when they have other commitments as well, which is why we built that cushion in for the remainder of the year. But human resources is on track right now. The next item, tax assessor's office. You all saw the initial draft at your last meeting. Between then and now, we received the response back from both management and the department itself. Those have been incorporated into the findings and recommendations at the end of the audit. And I will first and foremost give credit and extend appreciation to the tax assessor's office for their willingness to consider the recommendation seriously and already begin some of that implementation. And you'll see that reflected in their response that of the 3 formal recommendations, they agreed with each one of them and provided an update as to where they stood with those or how they were going to tackle those in the future. So I think it speaks volumes again to the work that our office did and their commitment to cooperation and basically everyone being on the same page moving forward. So we were happy to see that. And we will ask for you again to take formal action right now on that specific item to be put up towards the mayor and commission for formal acceptance on their next cycle as well. Any questions though about the actual final
Well,
draft?
I will ask, I do have some questions, but let me just make sure I have this timeline. Did we just get this at the last meeting?
We got the draft,
We got the draft.
and this is the final.
So, I mean, just in terms of process, because, I mean, not that my questions here will like change everything, but if I'm looking through this and have questions, there's not really a opportunity to have any questions, or is that not, on it or our role in this? So in this process that we're setting up, there's 2 things. One, I have a few questions they're not major, I'm fine with it, but I did have some questions of it. But in our process of setting things up for going forward, if we get a draft at one meeting and we look at it, but by the next meeting, we're not like, oh, we're expected to vote on it and approve on it. There's, I don't know if we could somehow build something in there so that, there's an opportunity to have some discussion, or is that not, I mean, is that not our role to have any kind of discussion and input there? So those are my questions, and then I have a few.
Yeah, I think that's twofold, Commissioner Myers, I think, we got the draft first, so, we looked at the draft, and that can go two ways. Once we look at the draft, we can always sit and gather questions, and then after we get to this meeting with the final draft, because I think, and I don't want to speak for them, I think, if we didn't hear anything from us, I would think this draft and everything was good, so they went on to do the final draft. Now, to your point, if we want to have some discussion, I think we can. I think that's proper. To
Yeah.
have no type of discussion, but I think, at least in my mind, I got the
Oh,
draft.
yeah.
I was thinking, okay, I need to read the draft, look at it. If I had any questions, I would direct them to them. Then if they came back to us today, we could discuss it. But
Yeah,
again, we
right.
can both ways. I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
with it.
Right. I mean, it's just, that kind of discussion, unless we had I think if we do it that way, it'd be good to put some deadlines in it and have
Sure.
group discussion, so that it's not just me sending questions there, that there's,
So we all hear.
so we all see it.
Right.
Or if we had it, if we had it before that last meeting, if it was like, okay, we're meeting on February, whatever, 11th, whatever, and then, you say, okay, well, we're gonna get this to you 10 days before and a draft, and realize that we may still be working on some formatting things or something or other, but then you could bring any questions or, concerns to this, because I'm just, anyway, so that's just a process thing for going forward. I won't, I did read this, carefully the other day, but see, I was like, I'm motivated by like dates, and there was no date to get anything
No
back.
deadline.
And we had a deadline of a meeting, so I read this yesterday after our relaxing meeting on Tuesday, evening, but, yeah, it was much easier than I anticipated it being. So there was just something on this, like on the comparative analysis, and this is just helping me with it, because I was surprised. And I'm looking at page 6, and I can't really I'm looking at this. Did you give us this printout, or did I print this black and white out last time? Did we get a copy last time?
Yeah, we get,
Okay.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The last time.
Yeah, you can probably, I can probably see it better on this. I was just surprised at the number of staff.
Mhm.
That when I looked at this, and like if we compare it to Macon Bibb County, or even if I do some sort of ratio with some of the other counties, it seemed like our office had less staff than all these other offices.
It does.
And then I didn't, so is the problem all those other offices are just overly filled with government workers?
Well, so, to answer your question, Commissioner, we did double check the ratios, not only amongst ourselves as an office, but with the, chief appraiser for Athens-Clarke County. So we were all on the same page with what some of these jurisdictions have in terms of staff, and in that section of, performance, actually, which is, page 9, or I'm sorry, 10 is where it talks about staffing. It goes into the beginning of what eventually is one of our recommendations, that staffing is recommended at the state level to follow a professional standard, and that standard's outlined in there, that's based on essentially one appraiser per so many pieces of assessed
Yeah.
property. And so we are below that threshold currently, and which is one of the recommendations.
Okay.
As far as, why some of those other jurisdictions have maybe even beyond the threshold,
Yeah.
that could just be their policy or their practice. I don't know for sure if some of those positions are also
Mhm.
primarily administrative and less
Mhm.
appraisal. But no, I mean, per our finding, we are understaffed
Mhm.
just by that threshold
Okay.
ratio.
And then
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go on.
I mean, the thing that leapt out to me, because I noticed that too. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it leaps out at you that it's
Mhm.
14 and the next one is 23, but the thing that instantly came to me to explain that is the fact that we're the smallest county in the state. So you have less physical distance.
right,
to cover.
true.
And the fact that our total valuation is 16 million versus Bibb County, which is 13 million, we have, because you've got almost all quote unquote in-town type properties that you're dealing with, they're going to be a much higher valuation than something that's say in rural
Yeah.
Bibb County. So, that was my reaction to that and to help explain it.
Yeah, I was just something I was noticing. The other thing I did find interesting, and maybe this is just like the commissioner and me coming out, was that the tax that flow chart of the tax assessors office reporting to, it was sort of like, I don't know where that was. It was
Oh,
like
it's on page 10.
10,
Yeah.
yeah, 10 is a big page, okay. Kind of, that the tax assessor is not, isn't it like with the state?
So the chief appraiser is actually appointed directly by the Board of Assessors. The chief appraiser is one of those positions that doesn't align perfectly within, the management
Right,
of
right.
our typical director. So that is correct. That
So there's no, our manager's office does not
correct.
manage this office.
That's correct.
And do we get, do they sell, what about the budget? Is that budget?
It is, so that is why I think at the end of the day, whether it's a constitutional office or an office such as the
Yeah.
tax assessor or court, the day-to-day supervision isn't going to always occur in line with our management's office, but the budget always circles back around to you all as a mayor and commission, which also is handled primarily by the manager's office. So there is always that connection that will take place, but the direct supervision of that office is not under the manager's office. Yeah.
And a detailed question was, I was surprised that this, what does they get? How much money do they get?
I think it's 330.
They,
As a stipend,
yeah,
yes.
does that come from, is that state required?
Yes, so my understanding is essentially because the Board of Assessors, again, the creation of a Board of Assessors is rooted in state law.
Mhm.
There are expectations and standards set by the Department of Revenue. And the training that also has to occur for these board members, essentially, there is a licensure or certification that board members have to obtain in order to serve. And it's a good amount of continuous education hours. I think it was almost 21 hours a year. And that includes training. And so, for them to take the time out of their day during the day, drive to Atlanta, things like that, I think that's to help recoup some of
Yeah,
that.
but that's a state thing.
Yes.
And the last thing, without going into my other little things, is you mentioned the succession planning in here, and in terms of, that's something that's come up among the commission when talking about different offices. So I was interested in what you are looking for in terms of that.
Sure. So succession planning, as you all know, is rooted in some of, well, at least the current strategic plan for the county as something to be looking for. And I think you'll find that as a component of each of our audits going forward.
Yeah.
And what we're essentially looking for is the physical setup of the organizational chart, like you pointed out earlier. Is this an office that has that clear line of succession? Whether or not it actually plays out in reality that way, we can't say. but do you have a director, an assistant director, and division administrators and so on? You know, this office being a little bit unique and not under the manager's office, there isn't necessarily an assistant chief appraiser in line next. The other thing is, we look at it from an education and qualifications and experience standpoint. We provided some information about how, based on the entire staff of, you know, roughly 14 individuals, there's a two ends of the spectrum essentially for the tax assessor.
Right.
You have 2 to 3 individuals who have been there close to 20 or more years. The other staff, you know, maybe under 7 for the rest of them. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with that, but, you know, that's something we want the department to be aware of, and what sort of training or other pursuits are they taking to ensure that there is an opportunity for someone to be considered for that succession as things turn over, that it's not just a given, well, it can't be an internal candidate, for example, because none of them are qualified. You know, that's something that we can point out, and I'm not saying that's the case here, but that's what we want the department to be aware of is, you know, if you're looking for external candidates, okay, that's fine. If you're looking for internal candidates, well, in reality, do you have some that are actually meeting the minimum thresholds and qualifications to be able to do that? So that's some of our analysis there.
Well, okay, so there was one thing that I was thinking of that you didn't put in
Okay.
there, and that is with, you know, well, you know, with the way that people change careers, and even if they are in a career for a long time, is there, you know, a position standard operating procedure, so that if tomorrow I put in my resignation and I've been working there for 20 years and someone else gets hired, is there anything in place to keep you know, are there not more than my job description? Do I have anything there to hand over and say, here are the processes, here's what we do every day? Is that something that's looked at?
Yeah, and so we may not have touched upon it directly with succession planning, but we did look at that, and it is mentioned in our audit regarding SOPs, standard operating procedures. And so we did find that for the most part, the tax assessor's office does have some of those SOPs in place. It gets a little bit more difficult, though, to have SOPs from a director level stance. There are certain activities that occur at the director level that aren't easily placed, for example, in an SOP. There are a lot of SOPs sort of at the supervisory and initial appraiser level, but no, we do look at that, and that was referenced in.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, I mean, I don't know when I left, you know, Athens, I don't know if it would have used my succession, but, you know, I had this folder of here are the things that I do, here are the processes and expectations, and that's there, and there, you know, I would like to think that there's an expectation that one passes on key knowledge and processes. And I don't know how that's captured in the world of auditing and operational analysis.
No, it is captured. We do look at that. We've got a number of documents that we observed that were submitted by them. And very detailed, to be quite honest, especially when it comes to the actual appraisals themselves. Using the different software programs, step by step, pages upon pages of like, okay, step 1, step 2. Because to their credit, in talking with the tax assessor's office, they did over the last few years recently experience some turnover changes. And it became clear even then that it was an opportunity to highlight any deficiencies they had when that occurred,
Right.
and they didn't want to go through that again. And so they did take it upon themselves to start writing things down. Now, certainly, are they complete? I think they'll be the first ones to say, no, they're still working on things, but they are in a good place, I would say,
Yeah.
as compared to, you know, some of the other departments that perhaps need a little more attention with that.
And my questions actually really weren't about the tax assessor,
Sure.
but it made me think about as we're going forward, you know, again, with documents, I mean, I would think, I'm just thinking more from this auditing perspective and job and what's going on, is like, how are one's documents? Are they, are they available for the next person? Are they there? Are they, do we have all that information? I mean, so, those are just things I was thinking about as I was going through.
I captured, I think we talked about succession planning, but I think you're really, the more technical is the transition planning.
Transition.
Okay.
You
mhm.
know, to be able to capture the things that you might not necessarily even capture in an SOP.
Okay,
Because SOPs are supposed to be living documents and supposed to be
Right.
improving as you change things, but transition plans, like estate plans and all that, are things that have to be kept up all the time.
right,
And thinking about that, that person's gonna be gone, or a position needs to be refilled.
right.
To have, that packet ready for that transition. So I think that's even maybe just more connected to succession planning than SOPs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is this transition planning.
yeah,
And I think on an annual basis, everybody that has a job of, as opposed to leadership and supervisory, should have an updated transition plan.
Mhm.
there we
in
go.
place.
There's the word we're looking for.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that is one of the questions, I mean, one of the many questions we asked every single individual, as part of the audit is essentially if you are on vacation, if you're out sick, who's taking over your responsibilities and how do they know?
well, I would add on to that, if you find it, when you move on, if you move on, because it's a different world where, I mean, I'm old school. I got one job and stayed there, but when I'm talking to my
Yep.
daughter, her friends, it's about like building. It's more not
Two to
about
3
loyalty,
years
it's
and they're
more
gone.
like,
Yep.
I got
Get
this,
that
I got that.
experience and they're
So
gone.
Gavin, I'm sorry, you were asking that question? Were you or were you not?
We did ask the question about, essentially, if you are going, whether you leave permanently
Yeah, I'm just,
or whether you are out sick, are there SOPs in place? Who is the person that is assigned to cover you? Not just I don't know, I guess they'll figure that out when I'm gone,
Mhm.
kind of thing. So that is an analysis that took place, yes.
Okay, because that fell up underneath it's probably me being naive. I just assumed you were doing that as part of this auditing process. I mean, that's a basic thing,
Correct.
if he or she drops dead tomorrow
Mhm.
and they're at a certain position within the organization, are they gonna be able to come, or is there something in place where someone can step in and take over their role?
yeah, and I'm kind of just thinking that because I realize that when you all go in and ask these questions, it prompts departments to build things into their standard operating
Yes.
procedure. So,
Absolutely. And that's our hope, is certainly that regardless of the answers to some of our questions, but us just asking the questions
oh, yeah.
brings an awareness that they haven't thought about perhaps before.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, since did all these questions, I'll make a motion to approve this.
It's only one comment that I wanted to
Okay.
make about, one of the findings on the electronic transmission of notices. So, this is the only aspect of this office that I, either personally or with other community members, have had a lot of feedback from, and not necessarily because
Oh,
it's
sure.
here, but because at discussion, anybody that's ever filled out that personal property tax form, most people, the first time I saw that, I said, that's going to CPA. I'm not gonna touch that. That's a mess, right? Because it's so complicated and so difficult. If you've ever done it,
Mhm.
automating it would really make a big difference. And I actually had a friend who had complained to my husband that this is the first year of her little business. She has a little business on the side. She got one of these things. She said, what in the world do you do with this? Right? Because it was, and I said, I remember the first year when we started businesses here, the first time I got them. I pulled my hair out for a month trying to figure out exactly how they wanted that done. Documents and the inventory that they want with it. And so it's really designed, I think, more for an accountant
Mhm.
to do it. For the thousands of small businesses, I think, I forget the number, but the number's in there on personal property
Yeah.
tax assessments.
Mhm.
And the taxpayer has to do the assessment
Mhm.
themselves. So you have to do all the valuations and send that in. And I assume that they accept it, and if there's a problem, then they
Yeah.
would talk back to the taxpayer and say, in my case, that tractor is not $45,000, it's $75,000 above.
Correct.
So anyway, I was happy to see that because I really do feel that just the format and the form
Mhm.
and how the assessment's done on personal property is like 1950s, the way to do it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to to the tax assessor's credit, when they saw this original recommendation, there was a good discussion that took place, and we worded it the way we did purposely, to explore different options for electronic notification, because they are limited in some capacity, by state law
Mhm.
to what they can offer, through a website or things like that, as opposed to the traditional postage and paper notices. So, you know, they recognize that where available, you know, they need to explore some of those alternative options. But for example, even the forms themselves, that you'll see, those forms are actually universal across the state of Georgia as issued by the Department of Revenue. That you shall use this form and there is no altercation to this form. So, but, no, but it's a good point though, yeah.
Or you can make recommendations to the states that
Yeah.
update their tax filing forms. I mean, you know, for your federal and your regular state personal income tax, that's all automated now, you know. And so all this can come into the next century and be automated as well.
And to go further, that should be the recommendation for everything. Everything needs to be automated, you know, I mean, I'm no spring chicken anymore, but I'm 45, but certainly no, people younger than me, mail is just garbage now.
Right.
No one even looks at their mail anymore. It's all either coming into an email or coming in through an email, or it's not getting noticed.
Yeah.
So.
No, those emails are hard to notice too.
You're right, I checked my mail.
I didn't say they were easy
Right.
to notice.
So there's been a motion on the floor by Commissioner Miser to accept the tax exempt for office. Can I get a second?
Second.
All of us second.
It is seconded by, that was Thomas. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And the last one, that'll really go into detail, economic development, again, well underway. We're actually completed with the planning phase. Our fieldwork phase, probably since the time I drafted this memo, is now complete for the most part. And we are well within the reporting phase. So, I would expect that you'll see a draft of the economic development audit, probably next month sometime. And as we talked about, housing and community development will just be deferred at this moment. We did not get into real detail with HCD, as other than to say, you know, they had a potential audit coming up and to be thinking about some of the material, but it's not at a point where we started where it would cause a significant harm to all of a sudden stop and delay. So we will certainly notify them that if this amendment to the work plan is approved by the mayor and commission, we'll give them adequate notice that they don't need to worry about it for the next couple months anyway. But yes, economic development will be the next audit that you see, and more than likely it'll follow the same template as the tax assessor's office report that you saw. And so staff is working hard on that right now.
So you're gonna try to, I'm assuming at our voting meeting in April for the commission to,
Yes, so in anticipation, even though I know it could have gone differently, I already submitted an agenda report for both of the things that you voted on today. Putting them in the cycle for your March work session, April vote. Yeah.
So this is gonna go into there's gonna be a work session.
Oh, I'm sorry, not work session,
Agenda.
agenda say, thank you,
Okay.
thank you, Commissioner. Yes, yes,
in 3 weeks, the 19th
yes, yeah.
of March.
So March 8th with an April vote for both the amended work plan and the tax
Okay.
assessors. Yes.
Thank you.
That's all I have as far as the actual
Mhm.
work plan goes.
Any questions about the work plan before we move forward for anybody?
So the planning for the FY 25
Mhm.
work plan, so what's the timeframe for that? When will we start to see your proposals, and options for the 25?
So my goal is to perhaps have some initial options for you in June. I can't guarantee that. I think, July would be for certain, but I'm gonna shoot for June. Because in anticipation, we wanna have that work plan ready to go as soon as we can into the new fiscal year. We don't wanna wait again until, October to be approving a
Right,
fiscal year
right.
plan. But the caveat to that is the budget as well. And so the budget for the next year is gonna first be voted on in all likelihood by the commission in June. And so that will have an impact one way or another on the workload that we also anticipate going into the fiscal year. So whether that's through an additional staffer that we've requested, whether that's through additional funding that we've requested, that will certainly impact the total number of audits and the timeline in which we can accomplish that. So that's the one thing we're sort of balancing at this point, but we're gonna get working on it probably in the next month. And, as things develop, I'll certainly try to get your feedback, as quickly as I can so that perhaps we're in a place, once the budget is approved and we know, okay, we're either going with option A or option B based on the budget.
Right.
So,
Okay.
And some of that feedback, just to remind the, committee, commissioners were asked to put sort of like a list together of things that we might want to see audited. Well, some of those things may come into play, of course, that we'll share with the committee. I want you all to know that's in play, and Gavin may come back to us again, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Say, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to start this process, or there's some departments, something that some commission might want to see, and, it'll be a majority vote on that, but there may be some commission, they want to see something totally different, and then there may be other, might want to see something else, so just keep that in mind also.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that at what point, that you'll
Yeah.
check in with the
I'll
commission.
check in with the commission more than likely, either in April or May
Okay.
to try and get some topics. And then the other, as we discuss every meeting, the other thing is the direction of Peace Cobb and any impact that they might have on our work plan as well. I think the good part about what we did today with amending it, we sort of can at least anticipate what the first item will be, HCD. And that gives us, direction as a staff that even if a work plan isn't approved in totality until maybe August, we're not wasting July,
Right.
kind of wondering what we're gonna do. I think we'll have a good idea and be able to do some things in the
How
background.
many departments are there?
So, there's roughly 40 departments, but then, another dozen courts and things like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Because you got to think about constitutional officers.
Yeah.
We could possibly do them, and then our internal ACC gov, there's a lot of. Huh.
Yeah.
That's work to be
This
done.
job- you got
A lot
this
of work to
job
be
going a
done.
while,
Yeah.
But I guess it'd be like 10 or plus years before you'd be coming around for a second turn.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and we're certainly looking at, as you'll see, we have the list of those audits that have been more recently
Right.
completed, and certainly those tend to go to the bottom of the list if they were just done 3-4 years ago, So we're mindful of that, we're gonna work with that, and it's just a balance with staff about, perhaps, for example, I'm not saying this is the way it's gonna be, but, as opposed to 2 periodic and 1 comprehensive, maybe we do 3 periodic or something like that next year. Just depends on what we see and some of the topics that come up, so.
well, it's always, interesting to see whether the budget drives the work plan or the work plan drives the budget. And of course, I would like to see the other way around.
Absolutely,
As of this time next year,
Yeah.
that we have really the idea of what the work plan for FY 26. So when the budget goes in, the budget reflects
Sure.
what needs to be done,
absolutely,
rather than what
True.
just can be done.
sure,
Like especially for these big comprehensive audits, for some of the big ones, when you still have that option to be able to, hire an outside agency to do something that's very specialized,
yeah,
that really does need to be done, that hasn't been done in 10 years, and, so that we can be more thinking on what's really necessary and what should be done, and thinking about too, how much is reasonable, given the staffing and the certain amount of money that can be accomplished each year with the same kind of quality audit that you've got here, right? And then you can say, well, how often can a organization expect to be audited, and how can we get down into, for example, the courts? You know, it's obvious from from the slideshow that you saw that the courts need some
Yeah.
internal control, audit at
Yeah.
least. And I know that's a funny relationship there to figure out how to solve those problems, and those are really solvable, and maybe in a comprehensive way solvable. But only if we've, you know, done the homework and been in there and see what can
Which,
be.
which slideshow are you talking about?
So, what was the?
Yeah,
audit
so
that was
we'll
done?
eventually be getting into that, but that's one of the external audits that we sent out.
Kel, you know, we just did, remember we did the, court system. All that, you remember I reminded them there was some internal control that they had not.
Oh, right, that one. Oh, yes, yes.
And that's-
Yeah, that one,
And that's
yeah.
every year. I mean,
Okay,
that
right,
makes it-
that
that's
comes-
not the first time I've
No,
seen that.
that's like standard.
It is
Right,
standard,
right.
but you know, but they had corrected that internal control, and I was concerned, say, look, you know, I remember seeing this last year, and it hadn't been corrected,
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
so,
And the year before,
you're right, yeah.
Yeah. But we did change the auditor,
yes.
Yeah.
right, right? Remember we had talked about that, how you shouldn't always have the same auditor.
Was that for the financial audit? It was changed?
Yeah, it was for the you know, that was, yeah, like the financial audit, and you had pointed that out to me, and I had,
Yeah.
you know, I was
It's
glad
more
to see that.
expensive to make that change, but you know, that should be again in the
In the
planning,
cycle.
in the cycle. So at least
Mhm.
maximum 7 years, but you know,
Yeah.
most, if you can afford it, every 5 years,
Mhm.
change them up, you know.
Okay, next item, internal audit update.
Yes, so a couple things to be thinking about from a scheduling standpoint. With your votes this morning, the only thing that we'd be bringing forward to you potentially for the April meeting would be an initial draft of the economic development, audit. At this point in time, that is certainly our goal to do that, but what I would say is sort of to, Dr. Myers' point earlier is, you know, if there is a way to send that out to the group as an initial draft, knowing that we're still gonna be waiting another month
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
the final responses from the departments, I think we could certainly entertain, because we're not taking official action, we can entertain questions and suggestions about the draft via email, and I can make sure it's a group email, that we're not just having private conversations,
Mhm.
obviously. But if that's the case, again, subject to y'all's thoughts about whether or not to even hold an April meeting at that point.
If that's all we're doing, I would agree with that.
I agree with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I would, it is handy, when you print these things out, so if you do have one that's
Oh,
available,
I
even
can
if
make-
we
yeah.
don't have a meeting, to just give us that option, or say we could drop by and
Yeah,
pick up
Look
a
at that.
copy.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I mean, the color copy is, I mean, that's really nice. You
We
kind
can
of see
provide
things-
that.
You can see
Yeah.
things better on that color copy,
We
Wow.
can certainly provide that,
but
yes.
that's helpful for me in my, like, old printer at home.
No, we
It's
will
not
make
a
sure
color
that,
copy.
you all get emailed, but then also we'll have physical, copies for you all to pick up if necessary as well. And then, like I said, I'll make it clear in my email that, I'd like you all to take a look at it, get comments to me, say within 2 weeks of receiving it. And then that way we're prepped for when you get the new version with the incorporated responses for potentially your May meeting. You know, even though we might look for action at the May meeting, the only thing you'll really have not seen is maybe the responses to any
Mhm.
findings and recommendations, but the meat of
Mhm.
the document will have already been discussed, hopefully in between, so.
And then we can have a discussion like we did today, Carol, when we
Yeah.
come out of meeting.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so, before we took action maybe on, the April 4th meeting, one other thing to consider is right now we're scheduled for, July 4th.
Mm.
And you know, given that that is a holiday and,
Making that meeting.
yeah,
Unless you're providing food.
I don't even know if I'll be here. I don't think I'll be here, to be honest.
Yeah, we're off that day.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw out something, because Dexter and I and the commission is not meeting
Yeah.
then.
I gotta ask you, Thank you brought it up. So is July when we take off?
Yeah, it's usually like from the June work session, you know, to I mean, maybe we come back for the agenda session. So which would be the third Tuesday. So I would like to not, like, I don't have any plans. I haven't, let's put it this way, I haven't made any travel plans, but that's the opportunity that I have to go.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
away, and it's summer for all of us. So I would, I mean, if we don't need a meeting, that might be another meeting to miss and just go to August.
What I can do is, we'll take a look at the calendar and I'll try and see how this lines up, but, for example, want to say that,
Because you will have what is the
I think
third?
it might be HR that aligns somewhere with that, but I'll say this. To my point earlier, the work will be done by staff within the fiscal year.
Mhm.
And whether you all as a board choose to take on the approval of the draft in July or even wait until August and then send it on to the mayor and commission thereafter, I don't think it's a huge deal, because again, staff will be done with it. It's just a matter of what agenda cycle we put it on for approval. So, although I do anticipate you all having to take some action on the HR audit come the beginning of that fiscal year, whether it's July or August, it's not gonna be make or break if you decide to skip July and just take it on in August at that point. So, we'll double check the calendar, but I mean, at this point in time, I think we'd probably be safe unless you and Katie can think of a reason before I say anything out loud.
I mean, this is what.
Yeah, right now, so the updated HR timeline that we issued in the to y'all last week, it does show July as being the final report for the audit committee to decide for HR. We can push that to August, I mean, as long as you all are comfortable.
I mean,
with
if
that
you,
being
I
pushed
mean,
to August.
I'm just throwing this out here. I'm just like saying if there was a need for a short, quick meeting to get it on the agenda and, you know, but I don't know if it, the same day that, right when the agenda setting meeting is. I mean, I will make, you know, I will be back for that. But I don't know whatever, you know, we need to have three of us here, so, and I know you know, it's not just the mayor commission schedule, other people do things in the summer.
Right.
Are we allowed to have these meetings either Zoom?
We're not.
Yeah, because we have to be present to vote.
Mm.
Since the lapse of, COVID restrictions,
Yeah.
that's gone away.
Yeah.
Mm.
I know for me personally, I have much higher chances of being here for July than the August meeting. So I'm actually gonna be at the Olympics in the first 2 weeks
Oh,
of
awesome.
August. So, not in.
Yeah, that's really.
So, I think the first of August is the first Thursday, is the first of August.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. So for me personally, as a member, I will probably not be here for the August meeting if it's gonna be in that first week, because I'm gonna be gone for the first 2 weeks of August.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we take action, it sounds like, for the April meeting? It sounds like we're gonna
Yeah.
skip April.
Okay.
We'll likely still meet in May,
Mhm.
and we can decide upon July and August maybe in May,
Mhm.
and I'll,
We should all have more clarity.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, on what we're doing.
including us, we'll have more clarity for you as
With
well.
the commission too, cause
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out when we was gonna take off for the summer, so.
Sure. But I will say for sure, we will not be meeting July 4th at
Yeah.
least. And,
Yeah.
And we might could push that June meeting a little later in June,
that
after
could
we
be-
see where we are.
Sure.
That if you say, I need another week or another 2 weeks, maybe rather than meeting early June, we may meet
Yeah.
the last week of June, which gets us close to July, but, so I think we
That's a
can be
good point.
flexible. We could push that.
Right, we'll all.
Right,
our
we'll know,
calendars.
right,
We'll find
right.
one
So
where the
maybe
three
be
of us in
flexible with the
town.
June meeting
Yes.
if you need more time. We would
Okay.
know more then at our next meeting.
Yes, and we'll make sure that's, for your consideration in May. Okay, but I would like, just to, Chair, if you would, call for a motion on the, April 4th meeting.
Could I get a motion, not meet on April 4th?
So moved.
Second.
It's been, motion by Carl Blunt, second by Commissioner Myers, all in favor? No opposed?
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, and then, just from a budget standpoint, I did hold, the regular meeting between the mayor, manager, and our finance department based on our FY twenty-five budget proposal. I think it went well. Obviously, that has yet to be determined by the mayor and commission as a whole. But we did, I think, make a strong case for, an additional position within our department, as well as some adjustments to the annual budget, from a funding standpoint, just to sort of maintain the momentum that I think we're heading in, with everything. So that has taken place, and right now, I know the mayor and commission will eventually be holding some work sessions in the next month or so to, discuss the budget, and like I said, June is typically the time that the final budget will be approved. Any questions on the budget at all?
So is it one position you're looking at?
That is correct, another management analyst position, yes, yes. Okay, from a Peace Cub update standpoint, report from February, you know, as predicted with some of the momentum that they have going. Staff hours have gone up even from last month, so last month, I think I reported that we spent roughly over 60 hours of our time devoted to that. It went up to over 80 last month, and again, that's just because some of the initiatives that they've been working on are now taking place as well, and some of the complaints that the office is receiving. There is certainly an administrative component to processing those, whether it's 1 or 5, to be honest, it's still something that has to be done administratively. And we're finding that out. So, again, I appreciate the understanding with regard to how it affects the audit workload as well. So, they are proposing an ordinance amendment, which again, that was something that staff's, recommending on the next cycle for the mayor and commission. And we've been working on that along with the, processing of any complaints or compliments. And then just for y'all's information, I will be, participating for certain, and I know Judy and Katie have some other opportunities for training with regard to Peace Cub, but the Community Police Academy starts, in the next few weeks, and that's 9 consecutive Thursday evenings that I'll be, going to that training along with some of our board members for Peace Cub as well. Any questions on Peace Cub?
I do wanna, just in terms of this budget as well, because I know that this is not the Peace Cop oversight, but we are looking at your budget
Yeah.
as a whole. And I just wanna have some clarity, on this, because I have my personal, like, understanding and, but I just wanna check in with you. I know that the Peace Cop chair spoke at a last commission meeting, and I may have heard this somewhere else as well, about the budget and the staffing. And I was a little confused by that, and wondering if there was a misunderstanding of the budget cycle and budget year. Because this isn't, the staffing that exists now is because of what was budgeted last year. And that the Peace Cop would have been aware of that so can anyone help me explain this
sure.
in terms of the?
So I think, Commissioner, to your point, just from a cycle of activity, I was appointed internal auditor July 1st with
Yeah.
the start of the fiscal year. The mayor and commission didn't vote to align Peace Cub with the internal auditor until August, the month following.
But it was anticipated.
But it was anticipated. The manner in which, it ended up, whether it was a separate monitor or
Yeah.
the internal auditor, that was up for discussion. But I think that the point that the Peace Cub chair was trying to make is that although there is a staffing mechanism now for this current fiscal year, the budget itself related to Peace Cub or dedicated to Peace Cub does not exist currently because there was a lack of staffing for someone to actually develop a budget for Peace Cub. And I think because it took place after the beginning of the fiscal year, that all of those stars sort of aligned, that budget had already been put in place. So I can tell you that from our standpoint, from an operational analysis office budget, there was no separate funding made available for Peace Corps specific initiatives in our current budget. But I am going to be proposing that certain funds be put into our budget for this upcoming fiscal year that starts July.
So budget being funds for printing community education
Correct.
versus the positions are still sort of cross.
Correct. The positions themselves are paid for essentially, you know,
Right.
through operational analysis. But when if you were to break down the administrative costs.
Is the Peace Corps group satisfied with the funding of the staff positions as not being one dedicated?
I think there is certainly concern, that I don't think it's changed from even before I was appointed to this position, that the recommendation out of Peace Corps was for a different structure than perhaps what was ultimately approved. I think there is a desire of the board to have more dedicated staffing that is perhaps independent of the operational analysis function of our government. But I think they also realize that that is not their decision, that is a mayor and commission decision. So that's probably the best I can say it without, you know, them, you know, perhaps saying it themselves that what their desire is. But I do think that's not far from what you maybe are hearing, is that they, aside from some of the administrative costs of running a board like that, I think there will always perhaps be a push to have more staffing and sole dedication to that board as opposed to the structure it is right now. But Commissioner Fisher is the,
Yeah, I think, first of all, his point is right on. I took a little bit of exception for what the chair had said, and again, you know, I don't say anything else when I'm been listening because I'm ex officio. I took a little bit of exception because again, Gavin had just gotten into place. And one thing we had always talked about, even before he got hired, that once we got that person in, then we will determine if we need to hire another person or add more resources. Now that he's in place, that's what we were planning on doing, but,
That kind of wasn't the way it was communicated, you know, like, it wasn't like, I wanna hear for the
right, yeah, I
future.
think one of the comments was that, you know, that the mayor commission not providing the budget for Peace Corps.
Yeah,
But that wasn't the case because again, this is technically Gavin's first budget dealing with
Right.
Peace Corps and what we're gonna do moving forward. So, like, I took a little bit of exception to that because again,
Okay.
you know, we just now got a staff in place. You know, he's talking about, if we, approve his budget, hire another person on there, that person may have more dedication to Peace Corps and having funding for them to do the type of things that they want to do. So I don't, you know, and I understand they want to move really fast. You know, I think sometimes these things take time. So, personally, I think we're on the right track.
okay, yeah,
And it is taking up a lot of time. I go to those meetings and there's a lot, you know, complaints. We're getting it fully in now. And so
so there have been more complaints that come in?
yes.
I just got, what, one or two yesterday, the other day. So yeah, so those things, you know,
Excuse me a second. How many total complaints have you had?
So, again, this isn't private knowledge or anything, but at the moment, Peace Corps, since actually taking formal complaints, which has only been a period of roughly 3-ish months, has received 3 formal complaints. There have been some informal ones, that have, again, taken some administrative time, but 3 formal complaints. Now, whether those are sustained or not is still yet to be determined, but, you know, with every complaint that comes in, it takes staff time to analyze it and do the
Well,
paperwork.
we're averaging 1 a month at this point.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
No,
okay.
no.
You know, and what had happened, you know, before Gavin came on, they said, well, you know, we got, you know, hundreds of complaints. Well, that may or may not have been the case, you know. So, but again, as we get going now, then we'll start seeing this come out. Then we'll see what that's gonna look like moving forward. You know, are more complaints gonna come in? And again, I think one thing that Peace Corps wants to do, and as they should, they wanna put the word out to the community that
Right.
this is a process. If we've done with any of our law enforcement agencies, this is the process. if you got a complaint, this is what you do, this is how you file a complaint. We're trying to automate that particular, those complaints and put them into play. And then we'll come to the audit department. So, but I think we're starting to call, we'll just see how it goes. But I think it's important, that's why I wanted Gavin to analyze what his office need in order for them to help them out. And we want this to be successful, but I think, again, like I said earlier, these things take time.
I mean, just to sort of wrap it around full circle with regard to you all as an audit committee and your oversight of what we do from an auditing perspective. As it relates to Peace Cobb, staff is fully dedicated to both functions. We don't favor one over the other. Whatever it takes to get it done, we're gonna get it done. And although there may not have been budgeted resources for Peace Cobb from an administrative side, and we are somewhat limited, it hasn't prevented us, in my opinion, from making sure, like, you know, if we gotta make copies, we'll make copies, we'll find it in our audit
Yeah.
budget. You know, does it perhaps hinder some of the grander things that they would like to do? Sure. But again, to Commissioner Fisher's standpoint, this is really our first opportunity to actually budget for Peace Cobb. So we certainly take their concerns to heart, and we are gonna try our best to address those as best we can, so. Last thing from an internal auditor's update standpoint, you were made aware of a few external audits that were completed. And this is a good sign, I'll say this, and an exciting thing from our standpoint, in that although we're not conducting the audits, although we're not necessarily in a position to dictate the recommendations or findings of an audit because they're unrelated or even under the jurisdiction of some other entity, it's a nice change to become slowly that repository, if you will, as an operational analysis department and you all as an audit committee to at least start be able to collecting these things. And so as we get them, we'll certainly share them with you just for your information at the very least. You know, there's no action necessarily expected of you, but I think it's great to see that you all in this department have been recognized as that entity that should be made aware of audits as they come in. And so, you know, if you have any questions about them, we can certainly go and try and find some answers. But again, we're not necessarily asking you to make any decisions related to this stuff, so.
Gavin is in my commissioner role, or actually just in my citizen role as well, is, you know, I get these audit things and I can look at the conclusions. But there's a lot of it that is dry or doesn't mean as much to me. And like, I know that I like Beth B here and maybe her eyes are on it, but, are you looking at them? Are you like, can I feel that there's another interested body
Yes.
that's out, that's looking at them a little bit more closely and thoughtfully from now, all your training that you're getting is, that's helpful to me as well to
Yeah.
know that, because right now I'm looking at it and they came and give the financial thing report and you can go, you know, and you see a little chart here or there, but it's good for me as a public official to have confidence in the office, in your office, that you're also other eyes on that. So I appreciate that. And
Just
maybe I'm saying I expect that.
as a quick comment though, you know, when I did my MPA here at UGA,
Yeah,
I did one portion that we did, nonprofits, right?
Yeah.
So we did a whole thing on nonprofit, and we did a whole presentation we have probably more nonprofits here of any small city in the country. And I did the presentation on financial analysis for dummies, basically, for all of us who don't do it for a living, but have to go through these, you know, what's a balance sheet, what's an income statement, what does that mean? What am I looking for? And it's amazing that there's really only, as a quick purview, like 5 or 6 things that you really should be looking at if you want to get something from these financial statements. And it's not hard. And I thought it might be a good idea for our committee here to have a small training on that, just because that it's not as hard. You get pages and pages and pages of this stuff, and you go, oh my God. You go, what am I looking at here,
Yeah.
right? And so not to be overwhelmed by it, because they are quite simple, and they're actually pretty matter of fact, but it just requires maybe an hour input of training on how to read financial statements. Well, you can.
I'm just out here giggling, because you're absolutely right. So much of it is just, how much money is coming in?
And
How much money is
Exactly.
coming out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there's this, no. How much money?
But you also have to, I mean, I guess it's what you all, I mean, and I think you might have showed this to me before, but I would appreciate that again.
Mhm.
That, I think that would be helpful, and I think ultimately you have to have confidence in the
system.
in the
Yeah.
system that's
Yeah.
doing it, because I'm not going in there and look at all the numbers about what's coming and coming out. So I have to trust that whoever we've hired is trustworthy to do that.
Right, right.
So, but I would appreciate that if that could
Maybe we
be.
can put that in the next
Maybe-
year on
maybe-
our training schedule.
Yeah.
We can do looking at
If
financial
the chair could
statements.
put that in for our training next year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, reading.
No, and what we can do too is like, as these start to trickle in, we as staff can start to take some of the easier ones, and even during our meeting, take 5 minutes to just say, hey, well, for example, with this one,
Mhm.
page 3, page 5, and page 7 are really what you need to hone in on, for this particular one. But I agree, like, going forward, if there's a training opportunity, we'll certainly take advantage of
Yeah.
that as well, but
And
yes.
the one that we've got for the comprehensive financial
Yes.
audit for, is it possible to see the actual, not just the PowerPoint, but the actual?
I
financial audit?
think
Is it in there?
the
Is it in
link,
that link?
I
Oh,
think
is it
there's a
in
link,
there?
yes,
Okay, That
yes.
has the whole, okay. very
Yeah,
good,
that
very
has
good.
the 100 some
Mhm.
pages of it, yes, yes,
Yeah.
it does, yeah.
Well, it is very interesting to match that up as we go through these periodic audits
Sure.
too, the
Mhm.
sections on that against what
Mhm.
they're.
Yeah, and one of the things that to Commissioner Meyer's point about us actually looking at them and sort of analyzing them ourselves is it does help feed our work plan. And if we start to discover, okay, there are trends or there are concerns or things that pop up in some of these external audits, we can always have that in our pocket for our own analysis if necessary. So for example, if we were to look at the comprehensive one and sort of, the internal controls question mark that comes up a lot, that could help inform some of the audits that we look at in the next year. And that's a good component to us being this repository of all these external audits. So, yes.
Mhm.
All right, well, that is it, Chair, from our standpoint. So,
Any questions from the, committee? The staff?
Motion to adjourn?
So our next meeting is May
Second.
yes,
second?
yeah, the first Thursday of the month, yes.
Oh, no, that's good. That means that the May voting meeting is late.
Late, yep.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, no, we have to, okay.
Okay.
Bill Beasley, second.
Second.
Thank you.
We all in favor.
We all in favor. Officially adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.